Are your sales and marketing team pulling in different directions? In this episode, we're joined by dynamic leader and fractional Chief Revenue Officer Kyle Mealy, who's here to flip the script on how you think about growth. Kyle reveals how to dissolve the divide between marketing and sales by focusing on one thing. That's your revenue. You'll also get an exclusive access to his marketing funnel and sales pipeline called MRI, a powerful tool to identify hidden opportunities in your revenue cascade. Plus, you'll learn how to make higher ROI decisions that drive measurable results. So don't miss this episode packed with actionable insights to align your teams and unlock untapped potential. Listen to Profit with a Plan now and transform the way you grow your business. Hey entrepreneurs, are you trying to boost your profits and grow your business? Well, welcome to Profit with a Plan, where we share strategies to help you scale your company, increase your profitability, and set up for a successful future exit. I'm Marcia Riner, your host. I'm a business growth strategist and the profit booster behind Infinite Profit. I've helped countless entrepreneurs to build highly profitable, sale-ready businesses. That's more money now and a bigger payout later on. By the way, today's episode is sponsored by Infinite Profit, where we don't just talk profit, we deliver it. And if you're ready to take your business to the next level, go visit infiniteprofitconsulting.com. Now, before we dive in, I've got something really special for you. And if you ever get my mouth to work, if you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're just not getting the traction you deserve, well, here's a tip for you. Have you thought about customer reviews and how they might be able to be your secret weapon to attract new clients and boost trust? Well, that's why I'm excited to share my free growth and marketing audit at profitbooster.biz. And in just one session, we'll show you how to turn those reviews into real growth. Ready to stand out? Visit profitbooster.biz and let's get started. My mouth is stumbling today. Obviously, this is a day where we're going to have jelly mouth, right? So let's jump on to the episode today with my guest, Kyle Mealy. Kyle is a passionate leader, teacher, and fractional chief revenue officer dedicated to helping entrepreneurial businesses and their leaders to unlock their full potential. Known for his energetic style, captivating storytelling, and proven strategies, Kyle drives impressive revenue growth while inspiring action. Okay, based in his town, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. I know I butchered that. Kyle enjoys life with his wife and 2 young kids, sharing the love for cooking, karate, and community through his nonprofit, the Second Gear Group. Kyle, welcome to Profit with a Plan podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be here. The intro is much too warm than I probably deserve, but your gift of trying to pronounce the city I live is definitely well appreciated.
Okay, so how do you pronounce it?
Oconomowoc. It is, yeah,
Okay.
Oconomowoc.
Wow, that's right up
5
there.
O's straight.
Yeah, that's definitely
It's a unique one.
Indian, right? Blackfoot?
I think so.
Yeah, so I lived in the Seattle area for a while, and we lived
Okay.
in Snohomish. So all those Indian towns were kind of tough. But yeah, no, I looked at that and I was like, that's going to be a tough one. Let's
That's
just break it
gonna have
down.
to just roll with that one. Yeah. No, it's
Yeah, how
funny.
do your kids spell it out? It's like when you go to school, you got to learn how to spell Mississippi, and now they got to learn how to spell their town.
It's funny because it is exactly how it sounds, and there's always an O in between. O, no, mo, walk. There's always an O in between. Funny.
Funny. Love it. Well, thanks for living in such a unique town. So, I
Great
know,
story.
right? So, Kyle, how did you get into sales and marketing like this? Because you've got these really unique ideas that help business owners grow. Now, I know you just didn't come out and go, okay, I'm going to do this. Where did you start?
Yeah, my story is very funny, but it's a roundabout way to get to where we are. But you know, what I've learned is that if you follow some of the principles that I teach, your business grows. And it's not just a theory, it is a proven process at this point. And it really started in a lab. Yes, my first job out of college was a lab. I was a lab manager. Uh,
Okay.
Right, right. And if you just extract what is really important about lab work in the field I worked in is we had a process that took dirty water and we made it clean. And at every step in the process of treatment, we measured the dirtiness of the water. But these had real implications for the environment. So the numbers had to be right, and we had to know the treatment was working. And what I fell in love with there was the analytical process. It
Mm,
was understanding, the value of quality data, understanding trends, understanding, year over year cycles with the treatment process. And then I had to develop SOPs because the lab worked 7 days a week and I only was there 5 days a week. And so I had to get people who weren't lab people to come in and do great lab work. And so I learned SOPs and I learned the value of data. Now, I loved what I did there. It was a lot of fun. My boss came to me one day and said, Kyle, if you keep doing what you're doing in 10 years, you can take my job. Um,
and you're
it,
like, no, thank you.
it's like, okay, so we're gonna have to look at something else. And so here's where, like, this is the funny part. This ready for the right turn. Here it comes. So I took over managing a karate school.
Okay, definitely. Is that a right turn or is that a left turn or a U-turn? I
Or
mean,
a
that's quite
U-turn or just like jumping on the subway now. No, I had done martial arts for most of my life. And the person I took over the school from, not took over, but like I was now the number two at the school, was the person I earned my black belt with when I was 9. So this had been a mentor to me for a long time. And one of the reasons why I landed near Oconomowoc, which is funny because when I first came to Milwaukee, that's where I lived and I worked at the plant and I fell in love with the city and my wife when I finally came back to it. But no, I would be able to go and teach for him at night, and he started to realize how much I understood process. And now, if
mm,
anybody is familiar with the book Traction or EOS, they know that there's this beautiful dynamic between visionary leaders and integrators, or people who have lots of ideas and the people who turn them into reality. And he needed that, and so he
mm.
knew I knew SOPs and process and getting other people to do things well without needing him. And so that was the thesis of our work together. And he taught me leadership. I fell in love with entrepreneurial businesses. I fell in love with small business during doing this because he opened up the books to me. He showed me, we did kind of great game of business there and showed me that, like, hey, you are a real cost center for this business. You better generate some money, or otherwise we don't get to do what we love to do, which was, help kids grow. And that's when I started to have to take this whole marketing and sales and like revenue stuff really serious because it was what protected us. Um, and the only way we could do it is if we could forecast, because it was a
Right.
monthly recurring revenue business, right? If we lost 20 students, it was hard to pay the bills the next month. So we always had to have a
Exactly.
pipeline. And then not only that, the longer we kept them, the more the business grew. And so by no other reason than we had to, I had to figure out marketing and sales. And so you're
Love
wondering,
it.
where does this go? We were doing really well. We had opened multiple locations. We were one of the first schools in the country to hit $1 million out of a single location. He
Wow.
went from working 60 hours a week, making, like store manager money to making 6 digits plus and being working 6 hours a week. And he sat me down and said, Kyle, if you guys are following the story, you know what I'm going to say next. If you keep doing what you're doing, in 10 years, you can take this over. He was kind of done with growing. He had built the business of his dreams, and I wasn't done yet. So here
Mm.
comes the second U-turn, and I don't know if that puts me on the right track or the wrong track, but I went and took over marketing and sales for a small digital marketing agency that had been stuck at 3 million for 3 years. And I knew business really well at this point because I had to, and I knew the power of predictability. I just never really had seen high level marketing, and so I got this really cool exposure to really the cutting edge of marketing. And then I started to see the problem is that there was a disconnect between marketing and sales. And I was
Hmm.
sitting in the marketing and sales seat for a small B2B business that was stuck. And I just started to realize, like, you can't just have a good SEO strategy. You need the human element. And the human element has to be out there saying something that marketing is putting energy behind. And I started to
It
see
has to
the
match.
connections. And we went from 3 million to 4 million to 5 million to 7.5 million in 2+ years, just under 3 years. Right. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm very lucky for that.
Yeah.
And that's, it was in that last year I started to realize that I really had developed a methodology that was different that nobody else was talking about. And people had heard how well we had done, and people were starting to ask me to consult. And so I said, I'm going to turn all of this, my belief system that this business didn't have, I kind of had to formulate it into a business. And
Wow.
ta-da, out came this idea of this small business fractional chief revenue officer that's data obsessed, that loves small businesses, that understands that in marketing and sales in 2024, especially B2B, there's a human and a digital component, and it's not marketing or sales, they're fused.
Yeah. Love that. Wow. Well, your history and your storyline and the left turns and right turns that you make were perfect examples of what every business goes through. And so you've really incorporated that into your story and it makes real like everyday boots on the ground sense because every company is going to hit the ceiling somewhere and they don't know what it is and they keep trying to push the same thing, that Einstein if you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, you're insane. So, you saw through that and I love the way that you are able to see the pattern of marketing's this beast and sales is this beast, but they need to be partners. They need to be partners in this avenue going forward. And you can't just open the door and say, okay, we're here, come on in. You need all these pieces together. So I love this idea and how you've come up with it. And that's why obviously we needed to have you on the show.
Oh,
So let's get into it a little bit and tell me
sure.
a little bit about your aha, right?
Yeah.
And how you formulated this so that everyday businesses can really grasp what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was so afraid of the entrepreneurial journey, even though I so deeply respect entrepreneurs, and I just didn't think I was one, right? I actually started in this kind of integrator role in process, and what I found is that actually, it didn't destroy my energy. It just took more energy than creation did, and I love
Ah,
the creation process. And at the tail end of my time at the digital marketing agency, I was starting to get bored because I felt like I had solved the problem and
mm.
I was looking for a new problem. And so the truth is, I was
That's
looking.
the entrepreneurial right there. That is the honest definition of an entrepreneur. It's like, okay, let me fix something or create something. And when it's done, you're like, next, I need
Right.
something else.
What am I going to do with myself? And yeah, no, this is exactly it. And I'm like, okay, I need a new job, is what the thought process was. And I go, what do I put on a resume? Is what actually this started. And I ended up writing a 55,000 word manuscript trying to figure out what I do. Because how do you explain that? Well, I got a lab to win Lab of the Year in 2 years when I was 23. And then I took a karate school and grew it to from 3 people to
Exponentially.
27 exponentially. And then a like there was no through line. And so my brain had to find the pattern. And out came the next level revenue formula. And it came from this obsession with taking things and moving them truly to the next step. And I kept saying, like, why are we thinking about just marketing and or just sales? Like there's a better way. And as I did this exploration and I wrote all these words, I realized that there was something there. And so out came three kind of core pieces that define not just marketing and sales alignment, not just saying marketing and sales together, but really building a shared fate department that is right sized and right expensed for these $1 to $10 million businesses. And so the
Love
three
it.
pieces of the IP, we can do whatever you want with them, but I'll just share them, is ROAS, not ROAS, if you're familiar with the marketing term. The second
Yes.
one is the revenue strategy statement, and the third piece is the revenue cascade. And those three really take it out of marketing and sales conversation and turn it into this true marketing plus sales equals revenue conversation.
I love it. First of all, my first book I wrote, I tried to jokingly say that it was income minus expenses equals profit,
Oh,
so
for
it was
real?
this rocket science kind of, calculation. And you've done the same thing, so I love
That's
it.
funny. That's really, I didn't know that. That's great.
I know. So, okay, so let's go through these at a high level, but let's go
Sure,
through
sure.
these because I know the listeners are going to just like, I need to know more about this later on. But tell me now, so how do you get the first part of this and the ROAS, not the ROAS?
Yeah, ROAS is a bit cheeky. And that's the way I remember it. It's spelled ROASS, so ROAS, not ROAS. So I'm going to
Right.
try and be careful with my language. And I try and leave the cheeky comment, one, because it's a really bad dad joke. And every time I say it, it cracks me up. But it kind of goes like people kind of like, oh, they kind of wince at it, not giggle, which makes it funnier for me every
I love
time.
it.
So now I keep it going, and it's my own private joke. So ROAS is different than ROAS. ROAS is the one you're more familiar with. It is a
Right.
marketing measurement of ROI, return on all ads,
Ad spend.
and on return on ad spend, ROAS. It's generally limited to single channel. So you would get a
Mm,
ROAS number from Google paid search. You would
right.
get a ROAS number potentially from Facebook. And if you've done any kind of marketing work or any kind of marketing agency, you know that that number doesn't feel real. And I ran into that so many times. And I'm like, this, we can't trust. One, you can't trust this metric. Two, there's a lot of reasons why it is that number. In the modern
And
buyer
tomorrow it will
journey isn't
change.
so simple. And tomorrow it'll change. In the modern buyer journey isn't so simple. Like you
Mm-mm.
don't know that they listened to Marcia's brilliant podcast and then went to Google to search her brand, didn't click on that link, came back to LinkedIn, looked her up that way, went to her website from there, and that was where they filled out the form. You don't know all that. And so if the last click is Google, it may mean nothing as far as return on ad spend. So
Exactly.
we do ROAS, return on all sales and marketing. I kind of cheated there with a little plus sign, spend. It would be boring if it was RASMs. So we did ROAS. And what we do is we take all the expenses associated with that department and we make it really simple because simple is the key to scaling.
Mm,
Simplicity is the path forward. If you think you have a unique business, you're going to be bald like me because your head is hitting the ceiling over and over again. So let's make it really simple and say all the expenses for sales and marketing go in here. And then very simple, we're going to measure the ratio between your expenses and your revenue. And that number is our guiding light.
I
And the
love it.
goal for most businesses, especially in the B2B professional service space, right? Because I'm really tight about who I'm good with. This isn't great for e-com, little bit different metric for e-com,
Right.
or like retail, a little bit different, brick and mortar stores. But you want to get between a 6 and X ratio between your expenses and your sales and marketing seat and your revenue, your total
Yeah.
sales, all sales. And I'm very coy about not calling your top line number sales because that betrays the idea that I'm speaking about is you don't just get sales with sales, you get sales with sales and marketing. So whenever you hear
Yes.
me say revenue, I'm really talking about that top line number too. So
But
yeah,
you know what?
the ratio.
Here's a question for you though.
Sure.
So how do you know then if you're compiling, I would assume that you're going to have subcategories under that row AS and say that the ad spend that we did from Google was this, and the ad spend that we did from, LinkedIn was here, and where we went over and spent on YouTube. And by the way, at the same time, we sent postcards. And, because there's not one marketing strategy you're going to do. You're going to have a pizza pie or a
Oh,
a chain or tree or whatever you can imagine picture wise of like a dozen different strategies firing all at the same time. So how do you
yeah,
determine what's working and what's not working?
there's always a zoom in. And I'm going to borrow from my martial arts experience here for a quick second and go kind of sideways and then come back. So I promise. So this is kind of like the purple belt problem. If you've ever met a purple belt, they're pretty proud of it. And like this is actually like and it's funny because The Office did this brilliantly. That's what rank and belt Dwight Schrute had was a purple belt, and he thought he was the bee's knees, right? A purple belt in most martial arts styles, not all. This is going to be a little
It's
controversial,
down towards the bottom, right?
but it's usually after about a year. And if you talk
Okay.
to anybody who's done anything for a year, they start to think they're pretty good at it. when you think about somebody who's trained up to a black belt, you're starting to think about, 3, 4, many more years to become a black belt. So there's a huge difference in depth of skill and knowledge and understanding. This one's really interesting. There's first degree black belt all the way up to 10th degree black belt. Do you know what the time difference is between a first degree and a 10th degree is?
Isn't it also exponentially?
It's 57-ish years, depending on how you like rank up.
By the
So when
time you get a black belt, 10th degree black belt, you probably can't move anymore.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, it's all in the mind, right? No, you're right. Like my point here is,
Whoop, we froze. Oh no. Well, listeners, I know Kyle will come back to us here in just a
hello?
moment. If there he is, are you here with
Oh,
us?
I'm
Hang
here.
on, you froze.
Am
Okay.
I back? I'm sorry.
Yes, you're back.
It's
It's okay.
awful. Um,
It's technology. It hasn't happened in a while, knock on wood, thank goodness. But you know what? It's life.
it happens.
And okay, so you were about to say something because you leaned in and then you froze.
I'll pull it back. So ROAS, like anything, is not it's simple at the start, and then you can get to multiple layers of mastery of it. And
Got
so
it.
you're talking about the pie, and I think that's a really good example of it. Like, yeah, you might have LinkedIn spend, you might have Facebook spend, you might be investing in a social media manager, you might be investing in direct mail. All of those things do go under that bucket. And you
Got it.
do have to double click in and watch those expenses as they relate to the big picture of ROAS. But what
But
I
you
love,
keep it simple. You
that's what I
don't,
love
you
about
don't,
ROAS.
you don't all, make them all different silos. You put them under one thing to keep it simple. Because when it's simple and you're a business owner in a $1 to $10 million business, you're probably wearing more than one hat, trying to keep those plates spinning. Less to focus on is sometimes easier to understand.
And here's the secret sauce of it. It's the shared fate concept. So you might
Mm.
have 2 or 3 people in wearing all these multiple hats. You have this kind of loose budget, and you're not sure what's working, what's not. But when you move the machine forward and you look backwards against ROAS, if your efficiency increases, basically the ratio between your expenses and your growth, your revenue, whatever you're doing is working.
Keep doing
Keep
it.
doing it. I'm going to talk about the revenue cascade, which is that third piece of IP I talked about, which works in tandem with ROAS. It's like the zoomed in of this because you do have to watch it. I'm not saying like send it and hope it works. No, there's more nuance than that. Like just like you don't send a purple belt out there in the wild saying you can kill and you're a lethal weapon now.
Yeah.
Same concept here, right? Yeah, I'm being dangerous of letting people get to that purple belt stage and like, Kyle said spend it. No, I didn't say that. But yeah, ROAS is the shared fate. And it's the beautiful because now you get the marketer and the salespeople in the room looking at ROAS together and they're looking at the expenses together versus
Mm,
fighting for each other's budget and
I love
fighting
it.
for attribution. That's simplicity. That's a gift. That's directionality for a small business who doesn't have time for ego, who doesn't have time for the marketer to try and take credit or the salesperson to take credit.
Or worse, trying to fight for each other's money and both asking for more because, oh, this team got this one or that division got that one. And
Yes.
it's like, every penny may is so important in a growing company and to know exactly where to invest it and to put it into a bucket and to have a team working together for the ultimate goal of increasing revenue for the company. That's brilliance.
Well, I mean, that's the goal. I think that is a goal. Here's a good example of it. Let's bring a real life example. My teams, when one of our when one of our CROs works with one of our clients, they forge the revenue department meeting. And so it's a marketing and salespeople sitting around the room. We're measuring against ROAS. That is our North Star. We're doing well or not based on that metric to a large extent. And now we got to talk about expenses. And so we're talking about as traditionally, a marketing budget is to do an event. It usually doesn't come out of a sales budget, but the salespeople are usually at the booth doing the thing. And so this is this really good avatar for this. And so the question was, we were looking at a ROAS and we are looking at this very expensive event and deciding, do we invest in this event? The sales guys now value ROAS because it's tied to their commission. Like when you get to the black belt level of this stuff, you start to really have fun with it. And they're saying, well, our buyers aren't really there. We didn't talk to anybody last year that was really that great. Traditionally, the marketer's like, well, we need awareness. We need our brand out there. And the marketer's going, well, wait a minute. You're serious? They weren't there? And the sales guys go, no, it's like 1 out of 10, maybe we're there. Well, now we're starting to have a conversation about, hey, let's reduce our tier, get our brand out there, get the sales guys in the room. Oh, well, we just dropped our expenses, which already means we're going to improve our ROAS. Now we do something different. We say, let's go find that 1 out of 10 who we think is going to be there. Let's set up a separate cocktail hour just for them, make it exclusive, make it invite only, make it something like a buzz at the event. And our sales guys, instead of standing at a booth all day, we're going to go hunt those people down, try and invite them to our special cocktail hour. And now we bought a lower tier. We spent a little bit on some cocktails, but we had our target market in our place, and they got this little special hook of like, come join us. We've got something special for you. The ROI on that is exponentially different.
Yes. And I've experienced that. So, what a fantastic play when you can bring the right people into the room because, when you're shooting and marketing, oftentimes, they have this, oh, it's brand awareness, as you said. Oh, we're getting clicks, we're getting look ads. Where if we think about that pyramid of the buyer's awareness of what it is, I mean, they're probably shooting down here where the salespeople want to get that top 3% that are ready to spend money right now. And
Mhm.
so having that being on the same play or on the same plate or in the same room is so much more valuable
For less money.
for less money. Exactly. Woohoo, profitability.
Winner, winner, winner. Right? Like, let's use your formula.
Exactly.
Income minus expenses. If the expenses is smaller, there's more on the end, right? But
Yeah.
that's thinking ROAS. That's thinking profit first. I mean, I think that's marketing and sales that any visionary can get behind or CEO can get behind. And
And
when
the
you talk
team can
about
get behind
strategy,
as well.
oh, 100%. And they have fun
when
with
when
that.
when they can see what they're doing and the results of what they're doing and not just siloed, then they start to think, oh, now they're thinking like a business owner, which is what we want all of our employees to do, is to think the way we think, because then they'll make better decisions and make better recommendations and think differently instead of thinking, oh, I got a paycheck. I just need to make numbers. And so here's the numbers that I think would work. Instead of going, oh, well, how do those numbers go against, the expenses and what's the ROI on that? Yeah. Ooh,
It's a
good
fun.
stuff.
That's a fun one. And you brought up something that was interesting. You brought up like the awareness and the clicks. Um, and I love marketing agencies. I came from one, but rarely do they, think about the revenue side. They talk about the revenue side. They want a sales enable, but I'm telling you, it's rare. It's why I went and started this business because I couldn't find anybody thinking like the way I was thinking about this. And it's not that they're vanity metrics. I think that's too aggressive of a term, but I think they value those metrics because they don't know what else to value.
You
And
know what? Great point. There's this thing that, I've talked to marketing professionals that I want to bring into my circle that I can refer to my clients, and I talk to them and they're like, oh, well, it takes 6 months to get data. And I'm like, well, aren't you an expert? Don't you already know the data based on the other customers that you've worked with? So can't you shorten the curve down to a month of testing? Because here I'm the client paying 2 to 3 grand a month to test plus ad spend to test. And if you can't get data in the first month, then something's wrong, right?
I, that it's true, the 6 month range, if you don't have a really clear ideal client profile. You don't really know what your messaging is. You don't really know what you're trying to test. You don't know the channels or measure what the market reacts to, and you don't know what the like threshold you're looking for is, and you have a lot of money to spend. Like then it works great. Like it's great. Like go for it. Wait out the 6 months. But if you're like any small business owner I know, that is not something you have an appetite for.
Exactly.
Kills me though because that's the best option that they sometimes have. And like I come
And
back to
they don't see the other side of it. I
no,
mean, I literally had a candid conversation with this guy, and and I'm like, are you kidding me? There's no shorter way to it. And his backup line was, "Oh, ads are getting more expensive these days. So now your $2,000 ad spend is only going to reach half the people you were going to reach before." And I'm like, "Okay." There was no way to come around it. And I think that if we looked at it by the way you're suggesting, that you silo it as a division of marketing and sales for a purpose of revenue,
Yep.
then
Things
everybody buys in and they start to look at those numbers and go, "Oh,
things
okay, I get it." It's almost like a business in itself.
I when I'm trying to teach this, I do talk about ROAS as being like our own little profit and loss statement. I talk about it in kind of those terms, like we only have so many inputs, we have to get this many outputs. Just like um just like your formula. It's like we only it's finite number of resources. If you want another person to carry the load, here's what that costs. Like, okay, let's go add another $60,000 a year person. Look what happens to the number ROAS. The math
It's
doesn't
coming
math.
out of your pocket. How's that?
Which one would you like? And that's when efficiency all of a sudden starts to brew. It's like maybe I can do this a different way because I would love to have somebody else carry the load, but we can't afford it. And
Well,
it
and
teaches all the
I
game up.
think we have to look at I think the whole marketing community has to look at ways to innovate their processes. And I think by teaming up with the sales has to look at different ways to innovate their processes. And because if we're not improving and evolving the way that the customer wants to spend and the
Mhm.
customer wants to buy, then we're just doing the same thing over and over again, calling ourselves crazy rather than looking at new ways to run divisions, companies, marketing strategies, sales plans, all that. You've got to find the new way of doing it. And that's why I love this model that you're suggesting as a business owner who does a lot of marketing and talks to her clients about a lot of marketing. There's got to be a better way. I keep saying there's you gotta there's yeah, there's just got to be a
There
different way.
is there is a better way, and that's it, and it's hard because we're talking about something so novel, right? We like for most of us who are experienced executives at this point, we were brought up in a world where there's marketing people and there are salespeople. The salespeople go out there and they, bang on doors and pull stuff in, and the marketing people make it pretty and make the website nice. And
That's right.
like, but what I ask is that each of us take this hard look in the mirror and be like, is that how you buy? Because if it is not how you buy, then it is not how your friend or your target audience is buying. And I think this is a good way to kind of segue over to the revenue cascade because we've started to talk a little bit about metrics. We started to talk about where marketing agencies fit in this, and we've talked about sales plan and what is steering that. And there's a lot of talk about tactics. And like there's a lot of noise, and not a bad noise, like I totally agree. It's strategy before tactics.
Tactics are necessary to implement the strategy,
100%. 100%.
but you still need that strategy.
And I think that's the tough part is a lot of business owners like we need more strategic people. Well, where does the strategy come from? Do you just happen to have somebody with some pixie dust? I'm not that smart. I've never been that smart. And so I started to realize, and then this comes back to the lab world, that with numbers, I could start to make some good guesses and some hypothesis about
Hmm.
what to do. And so that's actually strategizing. And so revenue cascade is in simplest terms possible. It is the simple math of broad awareness, how many people your brand needs to touch, how many people need to be like interested to make a decision on your website, take some sort of action, like reach out to you, fill out a contact form, schedule a call, how many people you need to talk to, how many people you need to present your solution to, how many people you need to send a proposal to, and how many people then ultimately buy. And if you can measure from top to the bottom and understand that flow, you all of a sudden know where things are broken and you can hypothesize, strategize on how to fix them, and then design and execute tactics that close the leaks in that funnel or pipe. Isn't that funny that they're both water oriented and I call it revenue cascade? There you go.
Love it, love it. But it is so true though, right? Numbers don't lie. And when I bring on numbers people onto the show, we agree wholeheartedly. But then the business owner is so involved in chasing customers and putting out fires that they don't understand that the data tells you really good information. And if you can formulate it in the way that you just did, and having that kind of sales formula, right? Of what are my conversions at each phase? How many people do I need to have at the top to pull out somebody at the bottom that throws me their credit card, right? And it is just numbers. And once you have that number, you can make improvements on it. If my conversion at this one is 20, but my conversion down here is 3, what can I do to get that up to 5? That's how you can improve things. And it is really that simple when you're aware of it.
Yeah, and it's hard. It is really hard. But this is when, I love to unlock the CEO, is because when I can present this in a black and white scenario, suddenly they just explode in solutions and they're like, oh, I know what to do here. I know exactly what to do here. And it's like, it doesn't have to be hard.
Mm-mm.
It takes a little discipline to care about the mathematics. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about this, and I'm how do consumers consume information? Well, I'm really guilty. I scroll on my videos, and I get in loops with him. And anyway, he talks about that statistics, the mathematical concept of statistics, the average came long after, mathematically, in mathematical chronological order, after calculus, after algebra, because we are not, this is all his ideation, but I just thought it was
I
brilliant.
cried through my 2 statistic classes, by the way. They were so frustrating, but I made
Well,
it through. And
human
it was like,
brains
once I got it, it was like, oh, it was crazy.
Human brains are not wired to really look at statistical probability. We're story makers and meaning makers. And so that's why people will go to a roulette table, see that it's been black, 6 times in a row and put $100 on red and be like, there's no way it's gonna, and it's like, it's still less than 50-50 because of those other green circles that they have. But my point is still the same. It hasn't changed because there's 6 black in a row. It's still a, relatively 50-50 chance. But that's the hard part for most people. And so I present it this way, and I'm going to focus on the sales side of the revenue cascade. And we can talk about marketing because I think that's an interesting conversation too, because I really do think of them as one unit. Not, most sales pipelines go left to right and marketing funnels go top down. Just think of like a vuvuzela, the long trumpet turned up, right? You open and then it's gets skinny. If you had 5 people do a discovery call with you. You present to 3 of them your solution, and then you sell one of them. It make it as simple as possible. Where's the biggest opportunity? That's the question.
The biggest opportunity,
5,
I think, yeah,
3, 1.
I think the 3,
No, it's the
because the
five to
3,
three.
pardon me?
It's the 5 to 3. If you can get
Really? See,
that
I would think it
five
would
to
be the 3 to
four,
the 1.
well, here's what and this is to your point. I'm gonna really drive home a really interesting point. Here's the thing that you were talking about with your marketing friend who said it takes 6 months to gather this data. Shouldn't you know the benchmarks? In most B2B businesses, cold leads, referral leads kind of come in or close at a different rate. But like
Mhm.
the grand average over all the time I've been watching B2B funnels and sales pipelines, it's 30%. It is
Mm.
really mathematically hard to get above 30%. Now, early on, you can get 40-50% close rate between presentation and sale because it's almost pure word of mouth referral. You've already been sold before you walk in. But when you introduce cold is much harder to sell. 20% is good. And so when you do this enough, you see that 30% is rigid. If you can go above 30%, blessings to you, you've got something figured
You're a
out.
rock star.
But at 5 to 3, you're losing 40% of the people who've already generated interest. And if you know enough to know that the hardest part is to generate interest. So if you
Interesting. So that
call
would be
one
your nurture
more,
campaign.
or no, this is just how you're communicating the value prop in your discovery call. Because you're
Mm.
talking about discovery to presentation, it's like you need to make sure you're getting the right people in that discovery call and you're giving them the right bite to pull into the next step. You incrementally increase that, and then you flush 100 people down through your funnel and your pipeline. You're going to get a lot more of those at bats at that 3 to 1, and you're
Nice.
it's a very fascinating, like weird way to think about it because most people aren't even measuring that 5 to 3. Most people
No, that's
measure how
brilliant.
many leads and how
I
many
love
closes.
looking at things from other angles because it's like I would have thought the opposite, which I'm sure I'm not alone in.
No, I do
So
this all the time, and
interesting.
so they walk right into that trap. So thank you
Of
for bringing
of
ownership
course.
right here.
Of course. Of course. Wow, this is you know what? There's so many different ways to look at your business and where you can spend your limited time and energy and effort, your resources, your finances, your team, your everything that you're doing, whether you're looking at and I had this conversation the other day with someone. Are you looking at the 20% that you earned, or like you just said, are you looking to the 80% that you lost?
Right.
How
Huge.
are you looking at your numbers and where can you improve? Do we look at improving on our gains, or do we look at how come we lost that and how can we improve that? And I think it's just whether you look at it from the top of the box or the bottom of the box or the side of the box, it's still a box and you got to figure out how you trap more mice, right? And
He's
do this
brilliant.
and I think that that's where people like you that's where people like you come in to be able to say, okay, Mr. Mrs. Business Owner, there's a better way to skin a cat. And we can come in and look at it this way, or we can look at it that way. We can look at it that way. Is it worth your time for a conversation to see if I can improve your results that leads to more money, happier team, happier community, everything goes better? To me, it's a no-brainer, but they're like, ah,
It's hard. I mean, one of the weaknesses of this model is that it is so mathematical heavy. And like, there's a large portion of the planet that tunes out when math comes on. Just my poor wife, love her to death. If there are two opposites, it is her and I. I am the loud guy who's like, math, analytics, let's build our budget for our family. And she's like, can we
ah.
just make lasagna and like go cuddle up by the fire? So two different worlds. And so I think a lot of business owners kind of shut their brain off once that complexity hits. And so,
Well, and I think that that's where the expert in you comes in to say, yes, there's complexity in the numbers and the analytics, but what's going to happen is I'm going to analyze these numbers for you and put it into plain English so that you can have it at a bite size, you know, amount that you can then take action on.
yeah, discipline equals freedom. And so it's the discipline of actually installing the revenue cascade in your business, installing ROAS, that all of a sudden you get plain numbers. And it's like, hey, Mr. Business Owner, you know your business really well. We're stuck, like, there's a leak right here. Here's what I think is the solution because I can tell there's a leak. Like, we just ran into one business where it was like they went from 100 to 1. Like, it was this so obvious, like, it was so clear there's this massive blockage. And I'm like, I think like there's a big drop off. We're missing something. And then we went and looked at the website page because this was up on the marketing side. And he's like,
Oh,
oh, our target audience would think this is stupid. Like this isn't even how they think. And I'm like, so you're sending all these people here and they're of course they're leaving. And so like those are the kind of doorways that excites the visionary, the CEO, that I love to have that like that's my favorite conversation. But the discipline is actually spending the time to pull those metrics. Now they don't have to do it. That's the expertise side. Like
yes.
don't have to know the answer to these questions. You just have to know
Who? The who?
the who. Thank you.
The who. And you know what? Coming to the who, this who is never going to be your accounting and bookkeeping team. So, business owners, I know you always rely when it comes to numbers to go back to your accounting team and why aren't they telling me that that my numbers are off? Well, these are different numbers that need to have sales and marketing expertise attached to them
Yeah, we're
and business management attached to them. And then I love accountants. I have many accountants on my team and friends and in my circles, and I love them to death because God forbid, don't do your own accounting. But these are numbers too that are essential to making your business run properly.
I couldn't agree more. I joke that, in this modern world, the CRO's best partner is that CFO or that profit, because old school way, the CFOs would be annoyed with the salespeople because the salespeople overpromised, or annoyed with the marketers because the marketers always ask for more money. If you think back to that original story, it's like we can get really predictable about what our revenue is, which makes the finance leader so much more potent because they're going to be like, oh, I know what to do with this cash now. Here's how we can take advantage of this. And now it becomes a dialogue, a partnership where it's like, okay, we see headwinds coming. If we can push here for the next quarter, I think we can drive enough to the top of our funnel where we're going to see it flush out 3 months after, and we're not going to have that cash flow problem. We're running into that with
Love
one of our clients. The industrial sector is down right now in the marketplace in 2024, late quarter four. His competitors are cutting staff, cutting marketing and sales right now. Because of the investment he did in this, we've been able to jam so much into the pipeline that they've actually been flat, which isn't, I'm not really proud of that, but it is just reality for that business.
In a
In
downward
a down, it's
spiraling
okay,
market, flat is good.
but we're seeing
Like walking
pipeline
out of the
now.
casino with money in your pocket. You
Right. Even
won.
as winning. But what I can say is we're seeing our pipeline and we trust our pipeline because of the revenue cascade, because we've seen it before, that we're looking ahead going, we're going to have a banner quarter one. And I think the rest of the competitors are still battening down the hatches, not investing. And what a
Mm.
gift right now. What like that's like so exciting to feel kind of confident. It's like actually going back to the casino after being flat, knowing what the next number is going to be.
Nice. Nice. All right, Kyle, we could go on forever on
I
this.
know.
We are so perfectly aligned, the CFO and the CRO together and working our minds and seeing the value of each other in each other's sector to grow companies. So where can listeners find out more about you and the revenue cascade and everything that you've got going on?
Well, it's a bit cheeky, but that's kind of my style. If you are ready for the next level in your marketing and sales and revenue, go to readyforthenextlevel.com. That's us. And if you do slash revenue dash cascade, and I'm sure we can put this somewhere
It will
or
be in the
somewhere
notes
in
for
it.
sure.
I don't put an email gate over any of my content because I believe in giving more than I get. And there's sneaky ways to know who's visiting too and use that to your advantage. So we can talk about that too. Otherwise, I push a ton of stuff out through LinkedIn and I'd love to connect with you.
Love it. Thank you so very much. This was just such a great conversation at a time when, the years are shifting and we're looking at trying to, put plans in place, execute on plans, get out of the year really good, make sure that last year did good and this year's going to do great. And, it's all part of thinking differently, evolving your business around systems and processes that truly work
Yeah.
and looking at the data to make sure you can forecast and make good decisions. I mean, for me, this was perfect. This was frosting on top of the cupcake.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I hope your listeners got a lot out of it, or at least
Exactly. I know. I hope that, thanks listeners for tuning in. I hope you got some valuable insight and actionable ideas that can make your business be more profitable. I know that Kyle's information and Next Level is truly a way to improve your growing business. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're doing everything right but not getting the traction you deserve, it might be time to transform your customer reviews into attracting new clients and boosting your trust. Go grab my free marketing and growth audit at profitbooster.biz. Just in one session, we'll show you how to turn those reviews into real growth. Just again, it's a way to help bring things and grow people. There's many different pieces of pie that goes into growing a company. So, well, while you're at it, subscribe. You don't want to miss future shows. You can always catch Profit with a Plan on any of your favorite podcast players. We're looking forward to more great profitable information on next week's show. So until then, make your plans and profit. Thanks, Kyle. This was great.
thank you.